Welcome back. Another regular on the program, and coincidentally the opposite number now to our last guest, Shadow Assistant Treasurer and West Australian Senator Matthias Cormann, speaking to me from Perth. Welcome back, Senator.
Good to be here, Janine.
Bet you've had a fun week. Before we get into what's happening out in the wild, wild west, the fact the economy is at the forefront today. We've had both sides giving their views. Now, we've had Wayne Swan saying it's going to be a very tough budget, and those national account figures show that the coffers are certainly looking a bit emptier. Yeah, good old Joe, happy, souped up productivity, 4-point plan, lots of motherhood. How are you going to do it with that big black hole, Senator Cormann?
What black hole, Janine?
OK, forget about your black hole. What about the fact that the national accounts show that there is going to be less money in the coffers? It is getting harder. How are you going to get the money in? I mean, it's the classic argument. He's talking about lower taxes. You're going to abolish taxes, revenue raises. Where's the money coming from? Is it all cost cutting?
Well, I mean, the problem that we've got is that Wayne Swan never knows how to put a budget together that is consistent with the circumstances we're in. I mean, he will continue to start crying poor again because revenue is lower than expectations. But, I mean, if you look at his track record over the last 18 months, for example, back in August, before the last election, we were told that the deficit this financial year would be $10.4 billion. By the time of the budget last year, that had blown out to $22.6 billion. And, of course, just before Christmas, we were told that the deficit this financial year will be $37.1 billion, a $25 billion blowout in about 12 months. Now, the problem we've got with the Treasurer is that during the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook, he actually downgraded the economic growth forecast, yet at the same time, he upgraded his expectations in terms of the growth, for example, in company tax receipts. Now, how is that possible? How can the government expect economic growth to slow down and revenue from company tax to go up? And this is the sort of stuff that we get from
but let's just concentrate on your policy. You've got a big push this week. You've got Andrew Robb, you've got Joe Hockey today. You're pushing your economic credentials. Just tell me about your philosophy. What on earth is souped up productivity? What are these kind of statements? And lower taxes, where's the money coming from?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, Labor wants to put more lead into our saddlebag by, I mean, this is the worst time, for example, to introduce the world's largest carbon tax or to hit the one successful part of our economy with a massive, complex mining tax. We want to grow our cake rather than to redistribute a shrinking cake into ever smaller pieces.
How do you grow the cake, Senator? Just give me an example.
Let's just take a step back. The first thing that, of course, we've said we would do is to stop Labor's waste, to start living within our means, and to make sure that governments spend less than what they raise in revenue. So that we bring the budget back into surplus, we start repaying Labor's debt. Then we take that lead out of businesses' saddlebag by getting rid of these bad anti-competitive taxes like the carbon tax and the mining tax. Then we will focus on, of course, cutting red tape. Now, I listened to your conversation.
Which they've already jumped the gun with you on, haven't they?
Well, they actually haven't jumped the gun at all. They have. I mean, if imitation is the greatest form of flattery, of course, the Gillard Labor government has really given us a lot of flattery because Tony Abbott, towards the end of last year, appointed Senator Arthur Sinodinos as the chair of the Coalition Deregulation Task Force with the task of finding $1 billion in cost savings for business per annum by cutting red tape.
David Bradbury said you're only $1 billion, they're going for $4 billion. Their Me Too is we'll raise you a couple of billion.
There is a lot of talk and no action from the Labor Party because over the last 5 years, what we've seen is increasing red tape from Labor, not reductions in red tape. And of course, with Labor, you've got to look at what they do and not what they say.
And I must say, I would have thought the carbon tax is going to be a nightmare of red tape. But let's move on to a subject close to our hearts. Mining moguls and the mauling this week. You're over there in Perth. I mean, what do you make of Wayne Swan's outburst?
Well, I mean, Wayne Swan has just lost the plot. I described him yesterday as a Yosemite Sam of Australian politics. He clearly still had a rush of blood fresh from his attack against Kevin Rudd, and he wanted to keep on shooting. So what better target than to focus on a few mining entrepreneurs who happen to have been critical of a few Labor Party policies like the mining tax and the carbon tax. I mean, it was an outrageous attack. I mean, so somebody like, for example, Andrew Forrest, he started a company like FMG from nothing back in 2003. He took significant risks along the way. He made significant investments in infrastructure
and
so on. He has created. Well, he has created 3,500 new jobs. And of course, the way it works, Janine, and I'm sure that you would appreciate this, unless Wayne Swan wants to tell us otherwise, in Australia we don't have a tax on wealth, we don't have a tax on capital. Our tax system is based on taxing profits. And of course, when you start a new company from nothing, it does take a while before that venture turns profitable. And of course, when these companies turn profitable, they do pay company tax.
And I mean, it is an important point there. I mean, Andrew Forrest is doing what every mining company does there. But just looking at the wider attack, do you think, given Clive Palmer's rather strange behaviour in recent weeks with the football and just his outbursts, Gina Rinehart's a controversial figure, and Andrew Forrest is in the High Court over his fit and proper, his ability to run a company. Do you think he picked on these three because they are quite controversial? They're easy targets, aren't they? They're not Don Argus of BHP. He didn't pick on him.
Well, he's clearly trying to run a simplistic, what he perceives to be a populist attack. I don't think it'll work for him, to be honest. Australians are way smarter than that. I don't know Clive Palmer all that well, but I did visit Queensland Nickel outside Townsville over the last 12 months, which was, of course, a company employing about 1,200 workers, which was about to be closed down by BHP because it was losing money. And Clive Palmer walked in, he saved the operation, he turned it around, he made it profitable. He saved 1,200 direct jobs in the process, and, of course, many more in the broader community, with Queensland Nickel being the largest private sector employer in that Townsville region. Now, I mean, it is very simplistic, and I think it's quite offensive for the Treasurer of Australia to pick on entrepreneurs like this who take risks, who quite frankly deliver increases in economic prosperity and in economic growth, where the Treasurer himself, as a failed Treasurer over the last 4 years, all he has delivered is more debt, $167 billion worth of accumulated deficits. He has left a legacy where, for years to come, we will have to pay the price for it, while people like Andrew Forrest, Clive Palmer and others, they are actually contributing to our economic growth, to our economic prosperity.
Well, I've been around long enough, Senator Cormann, to worry and wonder how many, not all usually of your WA mining entrepreneurs end up standing at the end, but we'll see. Let's hope at least one or two of them do.
Because it is a high-risk business,
We've run out of time. It is, and I hope so. And you have delivered the defence I expected you to today. Let's hope we move on to more sensible economic debate in the future, as we seem to be doing. Thank you very much, Senator Cormann in Perth. And that's all we have time for tonight. Oh, I know.